If there's one tried and true strategy I know will work in your real estate business, it's geographical farming. Today what I'm going to do is I'm going to break it down and give you the 7 keys to effective geographical farming. Success in real estate comes down to doing the fundamentals well, and what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about, in my opinion, the most fundamental part of real estate lead generation, which is geographical farming. I don't know of a single top producer that doesn't have an area or multiple areas or multiple neighborhoods that they're not seen as the expert in that through geographical farming. Now, ultimately what this is this is us going to a place, becoming and finding that ideal place for your business, identifying it, and then moving into a place where we consistently add value in a way that we are seen as that resource for that neighborhood. So what I want to do is really break this down for you step by step of exactly what you should do to find and identify your next or your first geographical farm. The first step is to identify potential neighborhoods to farm. Now, listen, there's a couple things here. And the reason I said identify multiple places is I like to compare different neighborhoods. We're going to talk about in just a minute on how to break these down and see which ones create the best opportunities. But a couple things you want to look for. Number one is you want to look for the place, who is your ideal client? Because if you've got a group of buyers that you've been working with that are naturally coming into your business, then probably what we want to do is we want to find a neighborhood that's going to match those natural buyers that you're working with, people that you already understand what their needs are. Plus, this gives you the ability to have the ability to really have the product that your ideal client is looking for. So what could that be? If you're working with first-time home buyers, maybe it is a first-time home buyer neighborhood. If you're working with investors, maybe it is investor properties. Whatever it is, we want to look and identify who our ideal client is, and then we want to tailor make this to the neighborhood. Now, a couple different neighborhoods that you can be thinking about, okay? Number one is you want somewhere that you would live in if you were at whatever stage it is that you're doing. If you're an investor, would you invest in a property in that area? If you were a first-time home buyer, would you be buying in this neighborhood as your first home? If you're someone that's moving up when you're wanting a luxury house, is this a neighborhood you would love to live in because of the amenities or the location or whatever it is? Ultimately, it's hard to sell something if you don't love something. So what is it? Is this the neighborhood that really fits your eye, so to speak? That's something that you would be proud to sell, something that you would enjoy selling, something that you would invest in, or if you were in the position of your ideal client or your buyers, that you would be glad that you could purchase as well. Now, a couple different neighborhoods that we can look at and where opportunities we're seeing right now is we saw the boom over the last few years, obviously, where we're having some of these new neighborhoods that were built over the last 4 to 5 years that were basically built by tract builders or national builders, where the builder may come in and they had a team that came in and they sold the neighborhood out and then they left that neighborhood. Now, what it does is a lot of times what you have to understand is that a lot of those folks that have bought in the last 3 to 5 years especially, they couldn't have bought at a better time. They've got more equity than you could ever imagine. And they're in a position where you're letting them know about this, and this neighborhood typically starts rotating some of the sales in the 3 to 5 year time period. So where are the opportunities that are starting right now where you can get ahead of the game, and maybe there's not someone that has absolutely been in that neighborhood? Here's what happens in those builder tract neighborhoods sometimes is that the client, if you've got the buyer, you come in, you introduce them to the on-site agent, they go under contract, the on-site agent stays in contact with them, copies you, but stays in contact with them and walks them through the process. A lot of times, those buyer's agents just leave the transaction. So consequently, when the closing happens, they haven't built a relationship with that agent. That buyer hasn't built a relationship, and now homeowner hasn't built a relationship with an agent that is in general sales because the person who introduced them to the neighborhood just kind of walked away. They didn't follow up with them. This gives us an opportunity. This is a ripe opportunity in reality because a lot of these neighborhoods don't have an expert and they're just beginning to start turning over. This is a place that I really like to focus is if you're focusing in on some of the specific neighborhood that may have opportunity, find those neighborhoods that are 3 to 5 years old that had a tract builder that had an on-site sales team that the second the last one was sold, that they left, and you're going to find some opportunity. The second step is to evaluate the competition. Listen, we don't mind competition, but if we have an opportunity to go into a neighborhood that has no one that's maybe a dominant agent and somewhere where there's one agent that is getting over half of the listings in that neighborhood, why would we go and start in that neighborhood? The same ad spend we're going to spend over here is going to have less competition. We want to pick that low-hanging fruit, so to speak. So this is why I was talking about multiple neighborhoods. Go in there, look at the past sales and the active listings and the pending contracts for the last 12 months. And then break it down. Let's say that, I'm just going to use these numbers. Let's say that there's 400 homes in this neighborhood or 300 homes in this neighborhood. Let's just use 300. If there's 300 homes in the neighborhood and we had, let's say, 30 homes that were sold under contract or that are on the market right now, look at the people that had actually been the listing agent on those, because who was that person? Make a list of those things. See who it is. If you've got someone in a neighborhood that has got 25% or more of those listings over the past year, odds are they're out there and they've been doing the work to build that themselves as that expert in that neighborhood, or maybe they live in the neighborhood and they know everybody. Why would we go in? Again, you may want to if the numbers make sense, but why would we go in there if we've got a big competition, if we've got another neighborhood where we've got 30 homes and we don't have anybody that's done more than 10% of those listings? We don't have any real major person that is actually the dominant agent in there. Because if there isn't a dominant agent, that creates the opportunity for us to be that dominant agent. And once we've identified that and we find these neighborhoods there, now we're going to take it to the next level to make sure it makes financial sense. The third step is to run the numbers. Now, this is what we're going to do. I want to break this down on kind of the way that I typically do this is. And I'm going to use the number. I'm going to use this actually for this example because it's easier for me. 400 homes. Let's say there's 400 homes in this geographical area, in this neighborhood, or this development, whatever it is that you're looking at. Now, I want to go in and I want to look at how many places sold in the past year, because what we're looking for is that in a typical environment where we've got the average time span that people live in a house is 10 years, that we can anticipate that we're going to have 10% turnover in a neighborhood over the previous year. So we want to find a neighborhood maybe that has had at least 5% turnover in that neighborhood. Ideally, we'd have 8 to 10%. But this is what we're looking for. Let's say that there have been 400 homes in that neighborhood, and let's just use the 10% number. And we see that there have been 40 homes that have sold in the last year. That means there were 40 listing opportunities in the past year. Now what we want to do is we want to break this down. This is what I anticipate we're going to spend. Now it's going to be a little bit different. I'm going to tell you how to do this in just a second, where we're going to spend the money. But I want you to figure a $2 per month ad spend on each individual homeowner. So if there's 400 in there, we're going to be spending $800 per month marketing to this neighborhood. And I want us to think about doing this for at a minimum a 1-year time period. We have to have it where we have the time for the consistency to start generating some results. So we're going to commit to a 1-year time period. So if we have that and we're saying, okay, there's 400 homeowners, we're going to spend $2 per month per household, we're going to spend $800 per month, and then we're going to spend $9,600 for the 12 months for the year. Now what I want to do is I want to go in and I want to figure out, what if I get 10% of the market? Okay, so think of it this way. I'm going to take that number and I'm going to say, okay, well, there were 40 houses that sold last year. I'm going to see that there were 10% of that would be 4 homes sold. An average sales price of $400,000. That means if we do 10%, then we should generate $1.6 million worth of annual sales volume on just those 4 listings. I'm not even going to think about the fact that those listings are going to generate potential buyers and also more opportunities, but I just want to figure on 10%. And I'm going to figure 2 things here. I'm going to figure the 10%. Now, if I take that $400,000 and I say it's at 3%, I'm just using easy numbers here for me. That means there's going to be $12,000 gross commission on each of those 4. That means $48,000 in gross commission. Hey, if you just use your split numbers and come out to a net number, what does that number come out to? Now, I'm just going to make this easy for me, and I'm going to do a low number. Yours is probably going to be higher, but 70%. So if we're sitting there and we're saying, okay, well, look, we're going to have somewhere in the neighborhood of about 48,000, 70% of that, that's going to give us roughly a little bit more. I'm doing this in my head, over $30,000 in gross income net out to you for those 4 listings. Now, what does it look like on one? Now, if we take the 12,000s, because I want to know what my break-even point is. And when we see this, we can actually see that if we get 1 closing, and we're going to average that out, it's going to be that $12,000 gross commission. 70% of that is going to come out to $8,400. So in reality, we just need to get at least 1 listing to basically almost break even, okay? And we can anticipate if we do the things that I'm going to teach you to do, you should get way more than just 1 listing in this neighborhood. But we know that if we get 1 listing, we're going to basically break even. We're going to have a little bit of a loss there, but we're going to do way more than that. So now we've run these numbers. Okay, well, this makes sense. There's not a dominant agent in this neighborhood. We can see that if we just get 1 listing, And I'll promise you, if you're doing these things and you're spending $2 per month in this neighborhood, you're going to generate some listings if you're following up with these folks. We're going to have the opportunity really to expand. Now, 10% is a number that we're just talking about we should get at a minimum. In reality, if we do this correctly, we should get way more than that in this marketplace, and we should be able to become the expert in that neighborhood and get upwards of 15, 20% of the listings that go on the market in that neighborhood in the coming year. But we've run the numbers, this numbers make sense. So now we can go to that next step. One of the things that's important is running the numbers, because we were talking about multiple neighborhoods. Which of those neighborhoods makes the most financial sense? Which creates the most opportunity? Now that we've done this, we've run the numbers, we've seen if there's competition, and let's say we started with 3 different neighborhoods. Which one of those presents the best opportunity for you going forward? One of the biggest and toughest things for me is I would fall in love with a neighborhood, and I would really want to go into that neighborhood, and I'd run the numbers, and as much as I wanted to go into that, I could see that there was a different neighborhood over here that had a higher opportunity for return for me for the efforts I was going to do. The most difficult thing is don't fall in love. Don't get emotional about being the expert in a specific neighborhood. Follow the numbers. Follow the place that has the lowest hanging fruit as far as the least amount of competition, and you're going to find success. The next step is to outline and plan your communication to these homeowners. Now, the biggest thing is the process is that people need to know you, and they need to like you, and they need to trust you to do business with you. So the first step is to make sure that they know you. So we're going to do this with, obviously, a lot of it's going to be direct mail. Some of it will be hosting open houses. We got a number of different strategies we're going to talk about here, but ultimately the foundation of this is direct mail. So what we're going to do is we're going to begin to lay out the first 3 months of what our direct mail pieces are going to look like. Now, if you remember, I mentioned that we're going to spend $2 per month on average. Now, some of that's going to look heavier on the front end than it does on the back end necessarily, because we have to, quote unquote, prime the pump. We have to get our name out there. So what a lot of people will do is that they will plan to, instead of sending a monthly newsletter in the first 3 months, is they're going to double down. They're going to send one every 2 weeks. Now, what does that look like? We're going to spend a little more money on some of these as well. So what I would encourage you to do is and then I'm going to get to what this looks like as far as the individual pieces. The first thing I would do is I would spend a little bit money on a couple of quarterly pieces that we're going to do. We're going to do a quarterly update on what the sales have been. Now, what I like to do is to do an oversized, fold open with a heavier stock print. Basically, this is going to be something where we're going to give an outline, and it's going to have a nice big cover on the front. These can be taped. We can put the address on the back, and it opens up. But this is going to be high quality, something that stands out. When they receive it, they're going to recognize the cover photo, and it's going to have big bold on there. Quarterly market update for the neighborhood, whatever the neighborhood is, okay? And it's going to have your branding on there as well. We want to have that consistency. Open this up. It's going to have active, pending, sold houses in the neighborhood for the previous quarter. It's going to have a little paragraph on the side here that's going to talk about what it is that's going on and what you're seeing in the neighborhood and what the opportunities are. We're going to give a little brief overview of that. It's not going to be text heavy. It's going to be heavy on numbers and where it's very easy for them to see. Any way you can add some graphs to this, any way you can add some trend lines to this, anything you can do to capture their attention in this to make it look extremely nice and basically at a different level than anything they're receiving, that's how we're going to stand out. So this is something we're going to do on a quarterly basis. So that's one that we foundationally know we're going to do. The second, and this is, I'm going to go back to these in just a second as far as when that first couple of weeks and that first 3 months rather, but I'm going to just give you the foundation for each monthly one, because most people, to be perfectly frank, won't do the 2 per month on the beginning. I hope you will, because you're going to get better results. But I'm going to give you the foundational things, a bare minimum of what you should be doing. We're going to start with that piece that's going to be each quarter. So for instance, January, I'm just going to use that as an example. We're going to send out end of the year market update for the neighborhood. And then what we're going to do is when we get to April, we're going to give first quarter results, sales, active pending sales. That's going to be the heavier stock fold open piece. And then we're going to go to the next 3 months. We're going to give that quarter, second quarter, third quarter, and then we're going to give the end of the year. So we kind of know exactly what we're going to be looking at. We can get basically a format done on one that we're going to have consistency with. We just change the numbers and we update the script or the information we're providing. But that's going to be the foundational, higher quality piece that we're going to do. Second month, what we're going to do on that off month is we talked about this, we're going to talk about something, an activity maybe that's going on in the neighborhood, or we're going to propose or give them a update on what's happening. Again, we're going to kind of play into this. We're going to think about, here's 6 activities that are happening in the month of February around this neighborhood. And then what we're going to do is we're going to basically have in there, if you're curious about your home value, don't hesitate to reach out. We're going to utilize a QR code that's going to drive them to a place where there's a search. Now, here's what we do to really make ourselves stand out, is that we're going to have that QR code going back to our website with a search for active, pending, and sold houses in that neighborhood for the last 3 months. So we can say, if you're curious about the homes that are currently for sale, have sold recently, or under contract currently in your neighborhood, use this QR code and it will take you to be able to see photos and details of all of those. This is going to drive them to our website. Ideally, you'll have a lead capture page there. If you don't have one, have your website. You know, with us, it's Boomtown. Obviously, KV Core does this, where they look at a couple pictures and it gives them an opportunity to opt in to see more photos. Again, we're driving traffic. We're adding value. On the third month, so that was January, February, and now we're going to be looking at what are we going to do in March. This is a time period where we're going to do some active and pending and solds. Now, we're going to show some proof of that we're the person to work with, okay? So think about this. We're going to, if we've got a just sold or we've got a just listed, we're going to do that during this time period. Also, if you have not had any sales in there, maybe your company has had sales in there, and you could highlight, our company sold however many houses in here over the last 7 years. Call me for details. Also, we may want to highlight, if we've got a listing, a specific property. We may want to talk about something we're doing in our business, but this is going to be the piece where we're really talking about some successes that we've had in our business. And then we're going to roll right into the next month, where it's going to be the quarterly update. So think about this. The flow is quarterly update, value from that standpoint. We're going to talk about what's going on in the neighborhood and provide some type of call to action to give them an opportunity to get information. And then the third month, what we're going to do is we're going to show proof of concept. This is going to be where we're going to have a testimonial postcard go out. This is going to be where we're going to talk about the sales we've had in the neighborhood, or successes we've had in the neighborhood, or our company has. And then we're going to roll right back into that. So this is the sequence that we're going to do. The key is to be consistent on all of this. And also, let's go back to, if you're really wanting to prime the pump on the start, now we're going to talk about how we build that in the first 3 months. Again, we've got the core pieces that we're going to do, but we're going to add a couple in the middle of these. Now, what we're going to do with these middle ones is we're going to go really heavy on specifically telling stories, or if at all possible, utilizing some of maybe the testimonials that we've had with the people that we've sold to in that neighborhood before, or people that we've sold to that were similar to that. We're going to talk about specific things, specifically speaking to homeowners in that neighborhood. If this is a neighborhood where people are going to be buying, selling, and moving up to a larger neighborhood, tell the story of one of your past clients, of what you did to help them, to make it easy, to make the transition smooth, how you maximized their price, how you made the headaches less than they would have been if they had not worked with you. Whatever it is, tell the story in the middle of these pieces. Continue to build that brand recognition for you by letting other people tell your story as much as possible. By doing this, and at the end of that 3 months, there's no doubt that people are going to know who you are. Now what we need to do is to drive home that we're that expert in that neighborhood. And this is where we're really going to start focusing in on specific tasks that we can do. The next step is to stand out and stay consistent. Now, I just talked about that we were going to stay consistent with our mailers, but we're also going to want to stay consistent that anytime we have an open house opportunity in that neighborhood, we maximize that opportunity. If we have an open house in there, we get a listing and we're going to have that open house, now we're going to go door to door and let people know, or we're going to make sure we're calling everybody to let them know that it's coming. We're going to do everything we can when we're in that neighborhood to really maximize our exposure there by getting involved in everything that's going on there. That really leads us into the next step, because these kind of two work together, and that is to become extremely active in that neighborhood. Now, we can do this a couple of ways. Obviously, if you do direct mail, you're just someone that maybe they've seen on the direct mail. But how can you become active in the neighborhood? Here's a couple of things that you can really do. And this is where that ad spend we were talking about on average will really start to work out. First thing I would suggest is hey, listen, if you have a pet, why not walk your dog in that neighborhood? Maybe this is the place where you begin to do your morning walk, your afternoon walk. You become visible in the neighborhood. Maybe this is the place where you ask, are you guys having some type of thing? I'd love to coordinate and have someone come in and have a food truck come in, where we would have food trucks every quarter that I would pay for everybody to have dinner, or to have available a dessert with that, where you could coordinate everything. What is it that they do in the neighborhood that maybe could use a sponsorship? Do they have an annual HOA meeting? Could you come in and maybe be the sponsor for that? What is it you can do to become more active in that neighborhood, more seen in that neighborhood, visibly by physically being there, and also by being the go-to person to be able to sponsor any activities they're going to have in that neighborhood? Maybe you help them take this neighborhood to the next level. Really, in being involved and being almost the person who throws the party, it gives you the ability to have the opportunity to meet meet on a personal level all of those owners in that neighborhood. Get active in the neighborhood, become productive, begin to add value to the neighborhood, not just with direct mail, but personally being involved, and I promise you're going to get some results. Last but not least, amplify any successes you have. Listen, we didn't do all this hard work to get that listing, to sell that house, to not take full advantage and amplify that. It's one thing for us to talk about the things that we've done, but it's a whole other thing to begin to share and let people know how that success has affected their value. So if you sold something in the neighborhood, make sure that you're letting the neighbors know how this affects their value. This could be done with phone calls. This could be done with a direct mail piece talking about the story of how this went. This could be utilizing maybe their neighbor having a testimonial that they share with you that you are going to share with everybody in the neighborhood. Maybe you got a listing. If we got a listing, we're going to amplify that success. So we're going to go out and we're going to have the biggest open house that neighborhood has ever seen. We're going to have a food truck. We're going to have something that's going to be, a little different. We're going to have a bouncy house for the kids. Spend some of that extra money that we were talking about that we're going to spend on a monthly basis on average to amplify the successes and the opportunities you have. Before we were talking about get active in the neighborhood. Man, if you were to have an open house where it had a bouncy house, or you had it where it was an after hours where you had an after party for that, where you invited all the neighbors, or whatever it was that you did to really take advantage of the opportunities you have and amplify any successes you have, I promise not only are you going to get noticed, but they're going to see and they're going to say, there's something different about that person. They really go above and beyond in our neighborhood to make things happen. And then it's not a matter of if, but it's when they get ready to sell a house that you get an opportunity to be that listing agent. I hope this has been helpful, and I'll talk to you soon. Thanks for watching the video. I specifically chose the video below for you because it builds on the one you just watched. I hope it's helpful, and I'll talk to you soon.